All right, so in 1959, Peter Drucker coined the term the knowledge worker. And for a very long time, up until now, that is what a lot of work has been post-World War II. We've moved away from that physical work to working with our minds. And as time has progressed since 1959, we started using computers, software, and so using our minds has been an incredible thing, and we've all built our businesses and our work just using our minds and maybe a little bit of keyboards. But today, that changes, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to introduce the creative worker. To me, this is where we are shifting our work and who we are becoming in this new generation of technology. In today's talk, I want to talk about three things. The first is, what is a creative worker? The second is, what does this mean for your business? And then third, how to grow and attract creative workers. So what is a creative worker? AI will replace and will continue to replace a lot of manual work that is done by knowledge workers. And really, at the end of the day, what's going to be left is creative work. And your work, my work, is not gone. It's just going to shift. So let's put a definition of what is a creative worker. The definition that I've kind of built here is a person whose work is revolving around analysis and leveraging tools in order to create impact in business. So, the first kind of easy place to look at is creating content, right? The rise of content. It's becoming easier, and really you'll start to see a shift of that you're going to spend more time ideating than actually creating. And it's not just from a software perspective. When you think about it from a hardware perspective, great cameras are all on our phones. In fact, probably most of our phones here have a way better quality of camera than some of the best movies, films that were ever shot. And so if you think about it, if everybody has a great camera and there's a lot of software that can help with editing and all stuff, what's going to make you stand out is your ideas. Now, we're going to kind of shift away from the idea that it's how the shot was produced and more to why was that shot produced. Now, the thing is everybody here might be saying, well, Matt, you're the camera guy. Of course, you are a creative worker, but not me. I'm a media buyer. I'm more in the analytics. That's not me. But the truth is that everyone is creative today. We are all going to be spending less time building spreadsheets and more time thinking about and analyzing what's happening in the spreadsheets themselves. Because a lot of that work is going to be automated, a lot of that now allows us to have more time to actually think about what does it say in the spreadsheet? What's actually happening in these ad accounts? As opposed to actually having to manually go and click around and do a lot of these things. And this is kind of the area that I'm most excited about right now. So we've kind of set the scene, okay? We've set the scene that everybody's a creative worker. We've kind of have a definition of that. But what does this mean for your business? And this is not just for agency owners. You want to consider yourself, even if you're a freelancer. I think a lot of people have talked about it already today. You are your own agency. You are, running your business. So, you want to think about yourself as like the boss of your work and how you work. And so this is really going to change for everybody. And so one of the things is, if we are going away from kind of this knowledge work and more to creative work, then that means that we as a owner of business, or even again, freelance, needs to reset their expectations for what work really actually looks like. And if you can set up the right environment, then you are going to be able to extract the most value out of your team or just yourself. So one of the core parts of this and how this is going to affect work is that deep work has to be at the centerpiece of the modern workplace. And if deep work is not established, then employees will burn out, expectations will be missed. And really, as a business, especially an agency, you're only as good as your employees. So if they are not set up for success and they are burnt out, so will your business. And deep work has to be at the center of this new style of work. Because again, it's going to be less about us clicking buttons and more time spent actually thinking. And if they're doing a ton of meetings, that's going to be very hard for them to actually be able to do the work that you hope for them to do. You want software and systems to be optimized, but you do not want to optimize humans. See, humans will be the only unique part of the future, and everything else will be automated in some sort of fashion, right? And so if you are also just being like, well, we have all this free time, let's just make our workers more and more efficient, then you're not giving them the time to actually think and give them these moments where they can bring humanity to their work and ultimately bring great ideas to the table. So we want to think about and we want to kind of shift our minds away from this idea of, okay, we're typing, we're on our computers all the time. And we really want to shift away from that and actually really focus on how are we having more time thinking. You always need people to be on, then they're just never going to have a way to have a relationship with their work that they can go deep with a problem because they're always having to answer a bunch of calls, messages, emails, Slacks, and everything else in between. So really, we want to reset the habits in work, and that is going to be the beginning of the revolution. Now, the last kind of core part of how this is going to affect your business is thinking about space. Some people are going to be working in office, some people are going to be working virtually, but the idea of your workspace has to be shifted. And we're going to start to see a shift towards collaborative work and more collaborative work. Now, COVID was such an interesting time because it brought, it made people go remote. And there's a lot of opportunities that actually was like very helpful. And I benefited from that. I benefited from the fact that I didn't have to be in the same city as a client. And that had actually allowed my business to grow. And also I get to live in a place that I really love. But what we're starting to see kind of post-COVID now, and I live in Seattle, so there's a lot of people complaining who work at Amazon that they have to go back into the office. But the issue, and when I talk to a lot of the people, friends that work there, some of these bigger companies, is that the employer is saying, I want you to come back to the office, but when you ask for a why, there really is no real true reason. But ultimately, the issue is that they never redesigned how they did work. They missed out on the opportunity of saying, hey, we're going to go remote for a bit. We're going to think about how we're going to restructure work. And when we come back, we're going to create a space in a physical space where we're going to actually have collaborative work. Say, we're going to do something different. That never happened. And I think that is a massive missed opportunity. And my team is in person, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think it's important to actually think intentionally about how people work together in creating that space, because I think you can build in person or, again, even virtual stuff and really build a space that employees are really excited about their work. So let's get practical. I've been talking a lot of theory. We've defined who is a creative worker. We've talked about what that could mean for your business, kind of on a more of a themes base. But let's talk about what is actually happening. And I'm gonna really just give you my experience, what I'm doing, and hopefully you can take some of these things and make it, for you and what works for your business, because every business is very different. Everybody's doing a lot of different work. I realize, I don't really like to just introduce myself, but I do run Gattozzi Studios. We create content, we shoot content in person. So it's a very collaborative space. We have to be in person because we use cameras and we shoot with real people. But I do believe that what we are building at Gattozzi is changing how we have a relationship with work and creative work. And ultimately, the way I see it, my recruitment strategy is that we are a sanctuary for burnt out creatives, more like a hospital, I guess. But we've been able to attract incredible talent. And there's been some talks about that, and David mentioned the score. And I think he mentioned about how it's really about environment that's the E of score. And environment is everything. And the feedback that I get from all of my employees, but even when people are applying, they are attracted by the environment. That's the thing that they always notice. And when in interviews or the feedback that I get from employees, they are excited about the work that they're getting to do. And I think that what I can do today is give you a little bit of what we're really doing, and maybe you can get something from there. So the first thing is, if you want to make a change, deep work culture has to start from the top down. So that starts with you if you are a leader. So if you're a freelancer, it starts with yourself, right? Maybe even with your clients, but then also if you have team members, no matter what your size is, it starts with you. If you are consistently pinging people, you are not setting the example of what you hope for. And I think, and I understand with agencies, there's a lot of communications, you're juggling a lot, but you as a leader need to be the counterweight to that gravitational pull of hive mind, lots of communication, and a lack of deep work. The next thing that you can implement is dedicated ideation time. And even if you're not in kind of content creation, you could use the same idea of dedicated analysis time, whatever your kind of deep work needs to be. But if it's important to you, then that means that it needs to be reflected on the calendar. And if you do not put ideation time, if you do not protect that time or get analysis time, whatever it is, then it will get filled up by something else. So it's very important to do that. For us, on Mondays, we have a 2-hour ideation protected meeting. Now, this is a working meeting, so it's not just like we sit on a call and we're chatting. I come in with my strategist. I have prompts. Some of it is writing, and it's like, okay, 20 minutes, write headlines. And after two hours, we have briefs, we have ideas, we're collaborating. So there's so many different things. That working meeting can be different, but every Monday, we know that there is protected time that we are coming up with ideas, and that's gonna change again week to week and based on our client needs. Beyond that though, we have a 2 to 3 other hour-long calls throughout the week that again are working meetings. So just off the jump, I know that there are 5 collaborative meetings that we're having. And this is a little bit different. Obviously, when you have deep work, you need to not be talking or working with other people, but you don't want to always be creating or having analysis in isolated, right? So this is super helpful where we have strategic collaborative meetings that we can work together. Now, speaking of meetings, it feels weird because I just said we do all these collaborative meetings, but you should have less meetings. But The fact is that those are not really meetings. They are very much working times. It just so happens that you're working together. The other component that I didn't mention is that there are days where we are at the studio together and we are doing that ideation together, like next to one another. And then there's times where we're doing that on a call. But beyond just those working times, there are not that many calls. And that's set up because the clients that are working with us, they're coming to us because they want great ideas. They want us to execute and make the best ads possible. And they know, and I communicate with them that we're not gonna have a lot of calls because I need my team to be thinking. And we can't be thinking if we're talking. Now, the truth is, beyond me, I might have more calls because of sales and other things, but my strategists, there are many days where they have 0 calls. So that means that they have 8 hours to think. They go out on walks. I make sure that they are just thinking and going deeper with the problems that they have to deal with. And this has allowed them to go deeper on ideas. And so instead of them having to create, oh, we got to get briefs out and they just get it done, they now, even if they're gonna, still do the same quote unquote amount, they are able to think about it more deeply, have a hypothesis that they want to test or create something, maybe it's a new ad idea or angle. And they're able to do that because they have less meetings. The last thing that I think is important, and this is more of a practical as well, is teaching patterns to build taste. So AI can write, it can write, but you don't know what is good or bad, right? Unless you have good discernment. So I think the thing about all these tools is that, oh, look, we could just do more things. And oh, we don't have to know copywriting. AI can do copywriting. The issue is that if you don't have good discernment, you don't really know how to use those tools to their full ability. So as a leader, you want to be able to spend the time actually teaching taste. That is the thing that is going to actually matter in the future, is knowing what is good or bad. But if you can spend the time teaching taste, then your team can actually leverage those tools to a better kind of ability because of that. And so what that means is, as a leader, you want to be spending time educating your employees. You want to be spending time actually truly training them. And that's going to look different across whatever your service that you provide. But for us, I am working with my videographer. We're breaking down shots. We're breaking down other ads. We're talking about how to shoot something. If I'm working with a creative strategist, we're breaking down copywriting. What's great copywriting? How to do it. I give them all this source material that they can learn. Maybe they'll use AI and that's fine, but they need to know why. Why is it good? Why is it not good? And you want to build a practice of teaching and educating your employees. So if I could leave you with really just one thing, it's that as we automate a lot of things, and the other day I was just working, I was trying this like AI agent thing, and I'm seeing it like click and do all this stuff. It was slow, it was clunky, it was not good. But the idea that there was like clicks happening, I was like, oh, all right, this is changing. What happens is there's a lot of people who say that or see that, and they're like, this is awesome. Now, think about how much more I can do. Think about, oh, if my employee doesn't have to do that, now they have 2 extra hours, they could do a whole new client. Like it's almost about filling things up. And the thing that I want you to leave with is the fact that humans are afraid of silence. They are afraid of having space. And everything, if you have space, you always want to fill it. My hope is that as work shifts, technology is not completely there, but as it shifts, there will be more space. You as a leader need to be okay with that space. You need to sit in that space, in that silence to think, but then build an environment that allows your employees and gives them the permission to also sit in that silence, to also sit and think, because that is where you are going to be able to stand out as a service provider. That is where you're going to be able to stand out as an employer, and that is where you're going to find the best results. So the future is bright. I'm super excited about it. And I think that we are in a very fun time where our work will shift from knowledge worker to creative worker. And just remember that we are all creative. That's my presentation. Thank you. I guess questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
What are some of those specific things you're doing with the team to help them continually develop that taste?
So I built out, called it Gattozzi Studios University. There's a few things. One, on there, I have source material of every YouTube video I've watched. It's all cataloged there. Any sort of writing samples, things that I found that I've learned from, it's all there. Second thing is I incentivize learning. So I will pay for any of the books on the list that are there, and I will pay them $100 to read that book. It is, if you think about it, you've got an author who has spent like their whole, like an Ogilvy, right? He's incredible. Paying them what, $100 to have them read that book? I mean, that's a great, return on investment. So I think you want to incentivize it. And then I think if you can create working meetings, that to me was the best thing. So even if they're reading books, that's all in theory. So if you can actually be like, okay, here's a book on copywriting. It's good to know the theory of copywriting, but actually having them spend an hour writing and you like giving feedback, like live feedback on headlines, and then having them redo that is, I think, the best. So having more working meetings together where you're critiquing work in real time and then seeing their feedback, to me, is like the best thing. But then incentivizing learning and having like an actual like wiki, whatever that is for you, I think is also super valuable.
Yeah. I love the idea of the working meeting side. Is it just like 2 hours every single week, or is there any more that you do throughout the week?
Yeah, so then there's like maybe 2 or 3 more that might be also like hour-long sessions. And then I would say usually like this week I had them I was like, for an hour a day, you're gonna write. I don't care what it is, you're just gonna write and send me stuff. So sometimes there is some asynchronous stuff as well. But again, like very, very much like want to have as much like working time as possible where they can have space to think as well.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know you work in person, but is there any ways that you think is a good way to create that environment online? Say if you do have a fully remote team, is there anything that you can, tips or like hacks for like creating like working meetings online?
Yeah, so I would say like, a lot of the calls are like, are not in person, or they are, virtual calls too. So we do have more of a hybrid system. What I would say is that there's kind of 2 parts to it. One is, I think just setting expectations of like, just like you would maybe with a client of like, hey, we're going to respond in X amount of hours, whatever that is. I think you want to also be able to make sure like, hey, whatever the team is, you should respond in this time, but then like having dedicated time. I think there's just like setting better expectations and making sure people know that is really important. And then in terms of like virtual meetings, I think you want to come in, give yourself more time than you think, and you want to probably give some sort of prompt to start. Like, and they have clients. This is the best. This is why it's like the best, in my opinion, to learn in like an agency perspective, because they have like 5 clients maybe that they're working on, or 3 clients, whatever it is. And you can say, okay, great, let's work together on whatever the client is, do 20 headlines. And then it's usually like 20 minutes, do this. Okay, we come back, we chat. Okay, now 10 more minutes, do this, whatever it is. And that can be different, again, depending on what you're doing. Like I'm just speaking from like a creative, like ads perspective, but I think you could do the same for pretty much any other like line of work though.
I got it, Mark.
Yeah, do you have, you're talking about deep work, do you have any like systems in place for managing distractions, facilitating the deep work, like Slack stuff and sauna or anything like that?
I mean, I think you as a person need to know when you work best. So I think that there's a level of knowing yourself. The hard part is how do you balance that when you are, like we are in very collaborative work as well. Like it's strategists working with videographer and production and editing. So there's like multiple departments you're going across. So it's like, there's definitely this blend of, you know, there's a lot of like talking together, and then there's just like, you want that isolated time. I think you got to know when you work best and make sure that whether that's morning or night or somewhere in between, and then you got to just put it in the calendar of like, this is what this is protected time, whatever that looks like. You know, more practical side of things, like I use Opal. It's a app that just, you know, blocks your phone and you can put it on your desktop. So there are things that like that, but my real true kind of advice is have protected time in your calendar, because if you're not, it's not going to happen. And I think that's where a lot of people miss. But know yourself. If you work better in the morning, awesome. I do. So I wake up early and I am cooking in the morning, but that's me. I'm not going to say like you should do a morning routine or whatever if that's not you. So just know yourself, and a lot of trial and error though.
Does your team know about that calendar?
Yeah. I think it's, again, like this is where it all has to start from the top down. Whoever, like if it's just yourself, you got to still like think of yourself as a boss. So even if you're freelancing, but especially if you're running a team, I think you really need to communicate those things and make sure that they know that, hey, going out for a walk is encouraged. It's not like seen as a bad thing. Or, you know, we use like Slack, whatever, emojis to be like deep work. So it's like, Lauren's doing deep work. I'm not going to like ping her, or it'll be like, hey, when you are done with blank, can you get me whatever it is. So I think that there's, again, you just got to set that tone. It's going to look different depending on how you communicate within your organization and all of that. But like, definitely try to find pockets and, again, start with yourself and then communicate that with your team. Thank you.